So you have your 3 pieces of colored paper, they lay flat on each other, and then you lift them up to where the bottom has about a pinky width between each, and then you go from the top and you fold this over, and then you have about another pinky width, and then you make a crease on the top. Alright, you then take the stapler, make sure these, all the papers, see this is, it can like kind of come apart. Make sure they're all together, and then you're going to put 2 staples in the top. There. Hopefully my stapler will cooperate. Alright, once you have stapled, you are going to fill this out. Triangle congruence foldable on the top, and then on your 5 little flaps here, you're going to write these 5 things. So pause your screen and do that. Alright, once you have all of those written, you're going to cut these top 2, so like in a group, leave them together, cut these triangles off, and then we're going to glue it to this top flap. We're going to lift the first flap up. If you want, you can draw a line here. You don't have to. We're going to glue these 2 triangles here on the side. So this is the top 2 triangles. I cut them off. We're going to glue these right here, and then below it we're going to write some letters. So we're going to write 3 S's vertically and then a triangle. Alright, these are the only 5 ways that you can prove 2 triangles to be congruent. We have these, like all of these little acronym things. The S's always stand for a side, a pair of sides being incongruent. A stands for a pair of angles being congruent, and then the HL stands for hypotenuse leg. It's the only like weird one. But side means that all 3 of the sides for both triangles are congruent. That's one way to prove it congruent. You don't know what any of the angles are, but you don't need to, because we know that they're all the same based on all the sides being the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to just, not have a triangle. We're trying to write the letter A, but I'm struggling. There we go. AC is congruent to EG. So that's just, how do we know they're congruent? Well, we talked about this yesterday when we talked about congruent triangles, or congruent figures. AC is congruent to EG because they both have one of the little congruence marks. BC is congruent to FG. And then AB, which is this third side, is congruent to EF. So you're just writing the 3 sides congruent, and then you write your congruent statement that we practiced yesterday. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EFG. Just make sure you're matching up your angles. A and E match, C and G match, so I put them both last. B and F match, so they go in the same spot. And this is, how do we prove them congruent? They're congruent by that side theorem. One of these 5 theorems that proves it congruent. So this is kind of like the intro into proofs. We're not doing the reasons part of the proof, but you can just imagine this as like the left-hand side, or that statement side of our proofs that we'll look at later. So we're flipping up to side angle side now, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the next 2 triangles and we're going to cut them off. And then if you want to trim this one down, you can. You don't have to. You can just glue the whole thing on. There's space. Or you can trim it down and glue it on. So we glued our triangles on. Notice I wrote SAS. Why did I do that? Because this is our side angle side page of our foldable. So now we need to match the 3 either sides or angles. So we've got 2 sides and 1 angle. If you notice on your picture, only 1 side is marked. So let's mark that one first. So SP, so if you can find in your picture how SP is marked congruent to QR, we are going to write that. And then for our angles, we have 1 angle matched to another one. You cannot write angle P is congruent to angle R, because what are we even talking about? This side, the whole thing, we don't know. You have to write in 3 letters, SPR. So remember that middle letter is the vertex. SPR is this angle. This angle down here is PRQ. angle PRQ. And then you may look at this picture and be like, well, nothing else is marked, so how do I know what the other side is? Because I'm telling you it's side angle side, but you can't really see it. Well, there are two instances of sides or angles where they're not going to be marked, and you're just going to have to be able to look at the picture and know. So the way to do that is by looking at this, and you see how these sides touch? These are shared sides. PR is going to be on this triangle is the exact same side as PR on the other triangle, and they are congruent. You can mark it if you want. You don't have to. I like to, just because my brain wants to see a side and then an angle and a side. Look at the other triangle, side, angle, side. But this is that reflexive property that we talked about a couple units ago and never really used. Well, now we're going to use it. So we'll talk about that more when we talk about proofs. But now we just need a congruent statement. So SPR is congruent to triangle. All right, Q and S match up. But this is where it can get tricky, because if you just do SPR and then QPR, you would be wrong. Because P on this triangle matches up with R on this triangle. So the R and the P actually need to get switched. So SPR matches with QRP. And then we've got one more thing to write on this triangle, or on this page. We're actually going to go up to the other color page, up here, and we're going to write this SSA, and then we're going to mark it off. So we wrote this on this page because people tend to get this mixed up. When they see two sides and one angle, the angle has to be in between the two sides. It has to touch both sides. So I'm just going to write this and show you that this is not a congruent statement, and you'll have that on your page so you can remember. We're flipping to angle, side angle, cutting these off, gluing these down. All right, now we got two more triangles, and these are proven congruent by angle, side, angle. So what does that mean? Well, it means we need two angles. The side has to be in between the two angles. That's important. So I see one angle marked, one angle pair. I only see one. We'll get to that in a little bit because we will have to mark another one. But angle A is congruent to angle B. Ooh, look at that. I'm only writing it with one letter. Why is that allowed? Because angle A can only mean this angle right here. Angle B can only mean that angle right there. So you can write it with one letter. You are welcome to write it with three, but there's no reason to. All right, S is the side. There's sides that are marked, so AE. And you're just looking for these markings that we talked about in yesterday's notes. EB. All right, and then it's like, okay, where's the other angle? I see one angle, I see one side. I don't see that second angle pair. This is the second thing. So the first thing that's not marked that you just have to know in your brain are those reflexive sides, those shared sides that we talked about in the last one. The second thing are vertical angles. So it kind of looks like little bow ties, but here are my vertical angles. These are congruent to each other. How do we know they're congruent? Because they're vertical angles, and they're never going to be marked for you. You just have to be able to identify them. These also have to be written with three letters, because if you just say angle E is congruent to angle E, what are you even talking about? Nobody knows. But specifically, angle CEB is congruent to angle AED. So CEB is congruent to AED. So basically the top one is congruent to the bottom one. And then how do we know that? Well, CEB is congruent to triangle. All right, C and D go together. Make sure you don't put C and A together. And then the E's match up. And then A and B are the same. How do we know they're congruent? By angle, side angle. That's how. All right, let's cut these next two triangles off. Let's go to the next page. Let's glue them down. All right, we have angle, angle, side. So I've got two angles. I've got one side. They're all marked here, which is nice. It doesn't really matter which one you put the angle on. I'm just going to say do C and G first. If you put A and E on the top one and C and G on the second one, that's fine. Those are kind of interchangeable. But angle C is congruent to angle G. How did I know that? Because of the markings. I'm just matching them up. They both have 2. Angle A is congruent to angle E. So we've got 2 angles that are congruent. And then our last side would be AB is congruent to EF. Then triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EFG. All of these angles match up because C and G are the same. A and E match up. Sorry, yeah, and then B and F match up. They're the same. So we're going to write that down. How do we know they're congruent? They're congruent by angle, angle, side. I don't know if I wrote that for all of these. Yeah, I did for that one. Oh, I forgot. On the side angle side one, it should be, I mean, y'all can probably figure that out, but it's supposed to say congruent by SAS. Yep. All right, we're going to write one more thing on here. So if I just move this up to the top, you want to write this here. The side is not between the 2 angles. So pause your screen and do that. All right, so we're going to the next page, gluing on the last one. Then we're going to write H, L, and a triangle. And then below this, or, I mean, you can kind of write it anywhere on the paper. I think for this one I wrote it above, but just somewhere on here it needs to say this little, you can even make a little star and write it. Both triangles must have a right angle. So I just wrote this down here at the bottom. Both triangles must have a right angle. Then we're going to write the H and the L and then we'll be done. So my hypotenuse is the longest side of the triangle. It's across from the right angle, so BC is congruent to EF. And then my leg is just any other side that's not the triangle. So one of the 2 sides that's not the triangle has to be congruent. Not both of them, just one. So AB is congruent to DE. And then triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF by HL. HL is the only really like weird one that has different letters than A and S. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this foldable. That's all we're going to write. So I'll give you guys a chance to do that.